The Nike Invincible has been Nike's premium easy run / recovery run shoe for the last few years, and for me it is still the #1 option on the market for those type of runs, but sometimes it feels a little too clunky and unagile for anything else. But the main question is the Nike Invincible 3 an upgrade, or are the weaknesses in the Nike Invincible series still prevalent? First off, I do want to say, if you have tried this shoe, comment your review in the comment section below, because then people who watch this video have a better understanding of how the shoe suits different people, because everyone is different. So the more context people have, it's always better. And also, if you're not, please subscribe. And if you're new to the Nike Invincible range and you haven't tried or heard of this shoe before, it's an extremely high stacked running shoe, which is also extremely highly cushioned, which obviously comes with some more weight. And it has Nike's Superfoam ZoomX throughout the whole midsole, and it is optimized for easy miles and recovery days with no plate in the midsole. And that obviously comes with a slightly heavier shoe and more unagile shoe, which generally feels a little slow, but also really cushioned, at least for the first two versions of the Nike Invincible range. The third version for me has changed that, and I will get onto that in this video. So firstly, the upper. Similar in many ways to the previous first two versions, however there is some minor changes which I do think are positive. First of all, the laces are now a bit more slimmed down, and they're kind of the standard laces now, whereas before they were quite thick laces, which was unnecessary. So I'd say it is obviously nicer to have less weight in the laces. They're long enough where if you do want to use a runner's knot, you can still double knot the shoe afterwards, which is important because I would suggest the runner's knot in this shoe due to some slight ankle slippage. That has also been in the previous versions. It stays in this version, so either go half a size down or do a runner's knot to avoid that. I don't really care, but some people don't like that ankle slipping a bit at the back. The material surrounding the ankle around the top is much more secure and kind of solid. On the previous versions it was quite thick, whereas on this version it's almost like a sock-like material. So the little bit around the ankle at the top of the shoe is just going to be a bit more secure. Also, there's a little bit more comfort in the shoe than previous versions of the Nike Invincible. And I've noticed that the fit is a bit more secure in the whole upper than the previous versions as well. So overall the upper's comfort is better. However, I wouldn't say there's too much significant changes compared to the previous version. Other than aesthetics, another noticeable thing is there's some reinforced material at the front of the shoe, which should help durability. You can't notice it in this colorway, but in the black colorway, you can see how there's a different rubber in the toe box, which should stop the upper material from pulling away from the midsole, which has happened in the previous two versions for some people with certain running forms. On to generally what is normally the most important part of the shoe, and that is the midsole. And there has been quite a few different changes. There's slightly more stack height upwards, I believe 1 more millimeter with the same drop as previous versions. However, that isn't noticeable. It feels practically the same shoe in terms of stack height. Also, it is considerably more stable than the previous version. So for anybody who's struggled with stability in previous Nike Invincibles, that issue has been totally eradicated in this shoe. In the previous shoe, you could really twist it, whereas now there's not any twisting, and the shoe is just much more streamlined and kind of keeps you going forward in one line rather than a lot of instability, which has happened in the previous two models. Also, there's been no announcement of a foam change. However, in this Nike Invincible 3 and also the videos I've seen of the Vaporfly Next Percent 3, which is coming out soon as well, the foam compound seems different. It seems more dense, and it seems like it can condense a lot easier. And underfoot, it does feel similar, but it kind of feels like it's ever so slightly not as soft, and I mean very marginal, but it also feels more poppy. So it feels like you can, in this new Nike Invincible, I feel like I can pick up the paces more, and I'd even possibly wear this for a tempo, whereas in the other Nike Invincibles I wouldn't have done that. So it does feel ever so slightly not as soft, but it's much more versatile, I think, in terms of what you can do. Because of the stability and because of the poppy feel, it can kind of corner better, it can go up and down hills better. It's just much more versatile, in my opinion. Maybe that's in my head, but I've definitely noticed it. The foam does feel different underfoot. The nature of the Invincible remains the same. I do think the main strength is for those easy / recovery runs. And the reason why I think that is true is because the ZoomX foam really helps cushion the foot and avoid impact, which just leaves your legs feeling fresh after a run, which is kind of what you want when you're having those easy days. The shoe is also wider, but in a way that isn't noticeable underfoot, other than the fact that it just feels a little more stable, because generally with narrower shoes, they're going to be a little less stable. So this is wider, and that is because on the previous versions, the edges here were quite an angled incline, whereas now it goes out to the edge of the shoe and has a much more steeper incline. So there's more width, and the middle of the shoe isn't as narrow. Onto the outsole, it's pretty standard. There's some reinforced rubber here, where you kind of get some more durability hotspots where the shoe might wear down a bit quicker. There is just a good amount of rubber coverage. If you landed on your heel or your forefoot, then, you know, you're kind of going to get some decent grip as well, some decent durability. I wouldn't say it weakens the shoe, which sometimes the outsole definitely makes the shoe feel a lot worse. It still very much feels like the Nike Invincible, even though it has noticeable improvements, and despite looking aesthetically very different. If you did like the first two versions, then you will like this as well. I think this is just a subtle upgrade from those, and if you didn't like the first two versions, I think that's where this is a much bigger upgrade with the stability issues fixed, and it also doesn't feel as clunky on your foot. The only downside, as I said, is the ankle slippage. I personally don't really have a problem with that because it can be fixed with a runner's knot, which is essentially where you loop the laces around the lace in the last sort of slot for the laces. That just locks down the ankle and the back of the shoe a little bit better to avoid this heel slippage. And the other downside for me is the fact that this colorway specifically is really nice, so I actually don't want to wear it for running. And generally I say don't be dramatic, running shoes are made to get muddy, but I absolutely love this colorway and I really don't want to run in it. So for me, Nike, please take some advice from, let's say, Brooks, where you just make uglier shoes, please. So for people who didn't like the previous versions, I would say try this out because there's been a lot of upgrades in areas what were kind of weaknesses before, and Nike have a good online returns policy, so you can always buy it and send it back if it still doesn't suit you. And for people who have previous Invincibles that still kind of got a lot of miles left in them, I wouldn't rush to buy this shoe because it is, the essence of the shoe is the same. There is some subtle upgrades if you do already enjoy the shoe, so next time you need to buy another running shoe, then buy this because there is a few upgrades which I think you'd enjoy. And finally, we get a lot of questions about the weight of a shoe. Previous Invincibles, again, it is a very, very similar weight. It is ever so slightly heavier, but on the foot I'd say it feels a bit lighter. Like I said, it feels a bit more poppy and a bit more streamlined, which is good. However, if you do want to know more about the weight, then you can obviously look online. I prefer just talk about how it feels on the foot. I think weight is a metric that isn't consistent in terms of how the shoe performs. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and as mentioned, comment your opinions on this shoe if you've tried it, and also comment your opinions on any other shoes you think top this in terms of recovery and easy running, and maybe any shoe releases you're excited to see in the coming weeks or months.